Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ketchup. This is our monthly. What the heck did we buy this month? We will quickly go through our games and show them off, explain why we bought them, maybe a tiny little bit about the game. We don't go into too much detail. A lot of these will show up on our main podcast, the First Bites, but not all of them do. And we don't always talk about why we bought the games and kind of show off the components. So this is the opportunity for you to kind of see what we buy in a month. And this month has been I don't know where this typical month. I actually bought 8 things this month, which is probably a bit on the high side for me, but it's been a while since I've had a relatively large purchase. So what about yourself, Dean? How many of you bought this month?
I think I bought 6, but only 2 of those are mainstream hobby. The other 4 are war games. I don't know if it's just I haven't looked that much or nothing's really jumping out at me. I will say that I kind of been living vicariously a little bit through some of our followers on Twitter and some of our friends from the podcast, like Lance, who seems to be acquiring quite a few games, and some of them look really cool. Some of them I'd never even heard of, and maybe that's just more because I haven't been into a store in a while. But yeah, so keep sending in those photos. It'll maybe curb me from having to buy games. It's good therapy.
Or maybe you'll want to make you buy more games. You're like, oh, that looks really cool. I need to get that game.
There's definitely a couple that people have purchased. I'm like, ooh, that looks cool, but maybe we'll just meet up at a con and I'll play their copy. I'm becoming you, Graham.
I'm not sure whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Oh, I wasn't making an assumption one way or the other.
Okay, so we're going to get started. I will start off with my first one. So I bought 8 items, but this is I'm going to count them as 6 actual things. So the first one, because the first one's kind of all connected. So the first one I bought is the new exit game. As you can see, this might get Dino excited because it's still in shrink.
That's what I thought. I was thinking, like, is that in shrink or is that like one of those holofoil finishings to it?
No. So I bought all of these so far. I really enjoyed the exit games. It's just usually one of the games I can get my son to play. So I figured to get this latest one. It's kind of in between for difficulty. It's rated a 3. So we've done, those are going to be, a good hour or two to play this one. So in connection with that, I also bought the other exit game that's new out, which is the Deserted Lighthouse. And this one is slightly different because, as you can see here, it actually comes with 4 jigsaw puzzles. I believe the jigsaw puzzles are part of the escape room. And both Lella and Gareth enjoy doing jigsaws. I do not like doing jigsaws. It's funny. I love puzzles. I love like logic puzzles. I like puzzles like this. I like board games, but I really dislike actual jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah, that's a shame. I love jigsaw puzzles.
So the last one, which Lella wanted to get because she figured, well, since I love escape rooms and puzzles, then we should actually get. This is an actual puzzle. So this one here was an escape room exit game with a puzzle in it. This is a puzzle that has an escape room kind of built into the actual pieces. So you're trying to find different clues, and as you put the puzzle together, you're going to be able to. It says, "Can you find the last puzzle piece?" So I'm not sure what that means, but I figured, it's 759 pieces. And figured give it a shot. It may make me like puzzles. Ravensburger does a bunch of these. This is the only one I could get. This is the astronomical observatory. I think they've got 4 of these. So if you know someone that really likes puzzles but doesn't like board games, this one may be an option for you because it kind of bridges it from the puzzle side. It's more puzzle than escape room, and then you can move them on to this one, which is more escape room than puzzle. So those are my first set of purchases.
Yeah, that one's interesting. The last one, I haven't seen any of those. Interesting to see how that plays out. If it's primarily a jigsaw puzzle and it's giving you clues, maybe how to find the pieces. Maybe if it gives you like little envelopes inside of only some pieces at a time. Does someone from Ravensburger sneak into your house and take a piece at some point in time?
Hide someone in the house, and the clues will be where in the house they've hid it.
Yeah, and it's such a weird puzzle count too.
Yeah, Well, I'm assuming it's because it says you need to find the last piece.
Right. But
And if
even
it's
760 is a weird puzzle piece count.
So who knows?
Yeah. Well, if there's an insert, don't look under the insert until the very end. All right, cool. Well, I didn't get an exit game and I didn't get a puzzle game, but I did get a game that is kind of like a puzzle game. And I already talked about it. So if I'm not going to go into great detail here, if you want to know more about this game, listen to episode 94. But that is Vienna Connection. Vienna Connection is it's a deduction game. Was it deduction, induction, deduction, I suppose, style game put out by Portal. And it is a re-implementation of their detective series. So this one is set in the Cold War spy theme. You're working for some faction of the CIA. You're in Europe. You're in Austria. Is your primary location, and you are solving. You're solving the puzzles. They're giving you bits and pieces of information. You're choosing which locations to go to. And of course, you've only got so much time to do it, just like a detective. And so when your time runs out, you have to answer some questions. You filled in some clues along the way with some different ciphers and decoding that they give you, and kind of give you the decoding key to help you try to do it. And then you are hopefully successful in moving on to the next chapter. I've done the first 2 chapters. It comes with 4. And it's been enjoyable. It hasn't been, I hadn't played detective, so I can't really compare it to that. But it's been a fun game, and I do like the theme. So if you want to know more about it, check out episode 94.
Yeah, I'm interested in that one as well because I really enjoyed detective. So the next game I bought was, I got it for 2 reasons. First reason, I needed something to bump up my cart, so I got free shipping. The second reason is because this is where Lola's family's from. So this one is called Venice. It's designed by, what's his name? David Tsurtsi. He's one of the co-designers on this. This, I believe, was a Kickstarter. I technically got the Kickstarter version from my local game store. The Kickstarter edition adds almost nothing to the game. But it is a game about moving your boat around the canals of Venice. Everybody starts the game off with 2 boats. And they're little plastic boats. And you are dropping off your workers. So we have little plastic boats here. They're going to be placed on the board. There are room in here to hold up maximum 5 cubes, which are the resources. There's 3 different types of resources. And your gondolier stands at the back of the boat. The pieces themselves are pretty decent. The biggest problem, though, and I want to quickly show this to you, is you have, okay, this is one of your assistants, but your gondolier is about the same size. They stand at the back here. And you're moving this boat all the time, and as soon as you pick it up, the guy falls out. We played for about an hour and a half yesterday, and I think almost 90% of the times you went to move your boat, you either knocked off a cube or you knocked off one of these, your gondolier. There are buildings around the board that we're going to give you actions. Those are going to be randomized each game. It's the same set, just where they are different. And when you move, you get your first movement for free, but then the little coins on the board that show you how much it's going to cost you to continue going. So you pay them all to get to your destination. Wherever you end up is you advance your worker, and each building is a tile like this. So your worker starts here. Each time you land on the same square, you start to advance your worker around, and he ends up here. And when you activate them, you can activate where your worker is on this tile and everything below it. So if you get him to the last square, you can do everything on this tile. If he's on the first square, you can only do the first thing. So you're also going to have some mission cards that say, take these blocks to this area. When you pass people in the canals, like when your boats pass, you have to either lose scrolls, which you need to deliver something, or you have to gain intrigue. And this is the one thing that people didn't like in the game. Whoever has the most intrigue at the end of the game automatically can't win. And we have other games like that before, like High Society is a good example. in which you're trying to bid, but you don't want to have bid the most through the game because that's the person's automatically out. But there is a fine line you can play with in there. Is you can kind of push your luck to see in high society that you really want to get those expensive cards. So therefore, it's maybe worth it to spend a little more, hoping that someone's going to outspend you at the end of the game. This game, this intrigue, there's no benefit to getting intrigue. You just happen to get it if you pass someone in the road. Or there's actions on some of those cards that will actually give intrigue to other people. You don't get a benefit for it. It doesn't make you stronger. It doesn't get you more money. It doesn't get you more powerful. You just happen to get it. So at the end of the game, it's like, okay, Dean, you have the most intrigue. You lost. You didn't get any benefit from getting that intrigue. Didn't make you get more points. You just got the most, so you're out of the game. That rubbed an awful lot of people the wrong way, because I would hope that if I could lose the game, then I should be getting something much more powerful in the game to kind of offset the risk of me losing the game. No, you don't get that. And it felt very odd, because at the end of the game, on the very last round, everybody had to take their last turn. And Jason, it's like, well, Jason, doesn't matter what you do, you're out of the game. Said, because we're all going to end up with 0 intrigue. And I was first player. And it said the person last in the turn order is the person who gets eliminated if you're all tied. I'm like, there's nothing you can do. So it felt very anticlimactic. It's like, I understand why it's there, but usually when you had that kind of mechanism, you're getting a benefit during the game. And I didn't see any benefit to getting intrigue during the game. So the components were too small. No one liked that intrigue piece, but the actual gameplay itself is kind of fun, because when you pass your workers in buildings, or when you end up in a location, every worker of yours that you pass, that you've placed on buildings, you get to activate. Where you end up, you get to advance and activate. So if you're doing a long run, you're like, okay, I'm going to activate my guy here, which is going to give me a cube, which is going to allow me to do this and that. And I passed this one too. I enjoyed that, but the intrigue part kind of was a bit, didn't like that piece too much. So like I said, I've only had one play. I'll talk about this more on the podcast. It's the first bite. So mixed bag. Do need to play it again, but that is Venice from David Surtsey and Andrei Novak, put up by Brain Crack Games.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of it, but it sounds interesting. Did Lola feel like she was back home?
She good. She could smell the canals wafting up off the board. Yeah. We've been to Venice. That's not the nicest smell.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that sort of intrigue mechanism, but so maybe you said this. Does the player get to control whether they get the intrigue? Like, are they making choices, or is it just, you said it's kind of random? Like, you pass certain places, you get it, pass other people, you get it. I mean, it doesn't sound like, I can understand if it was something I was choosing and I'm kind of gambling. Well, I hope I don't end up with the most intrigue, but it doesn't sound like that's the case.
There are three ways to get intrigue. One, when you pass someone on the canal, you can either give up a scroll or gain intrigue. You have your choice there.
Okay.
There are some actions on those buildings that when you activate your worker there, it could say you gain an intrigue to get a card. And some of those cards are pretty decent. But there are other places you can go to just get a card without getting the intrigue. And the third one is there is one of the buildings that allows you to say, I get a scroll, but everyone else gets an intrigue. Gotcha. Now, there are a couple ways to get rid of intrigue as well. If you go, I believe it's the church allows you to get rid of basically up to, if your worker's maxed out, you can get rid of up to 3 intrigue by just passing the church. I guess you're throwing money into the church to resolve your sins or something like that. So there are ways to manage it, but then I think we never had a problem getting rid of intrigue. Mm-hmm. There was always a way to get rid of intrigue, because even at the end of the game, if you have intrigue left over, you can basically buy it off. If you have leftover coins, for every 4 coins, you can get rid of an intrigue. And your intrigue only goes up to 8 anyway. So with the combination of giving up scrolls and giving up money, no one had any problem with intrigues, which were all left at 0. And then it was just sort of your last player, you're out of the game. So that's what I mean. It didn't feel quite right.
Yeah. I don't know. Might be worth a play.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth a play, but I'm not sure about that rule.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about a game. So I bought six plus an expansion. Well, I bought a couple expansions, but I'll only talk about one of the expansions. But before I get to so the six, four of them were war games. So you can zone out when I talk about those, but I will talk about one of them. And this is a game by White Dog Games, and it is entitled They Fell Like Stones. So They Fell Like Stones is based on the Battle of Is and Luanda from the Zulu War, 1879, between Britain and the Zulus, the kingdom of the Zulus. It is a solo player only game. I only bought it because the Zulu War is kind of one of my pet passions. I've always enjoyed reading about it, learning about it, playing it. I think it's the movies that came out, in the late 70s. I think it was 70s, might have been 60s even, with Michael Caine and Bob Hoskins, and I think Richard Burton was in it, and so like that. So I just have always been enamored by it. And this one is a solo only game. Like I said, it's supposed to be pretty good. I've opened it. I think I'm trying to think if I had to clip these counters or not, but whatever. I've looked at the map. I've touched the map. I've looked at the units. I've read the rules. The rules are the White Dog Games are kind of like Holland Spiel and Legion, where the rule books are not overly intense. I think this is like maybe an 8-page rule book. So it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, so that's one of them I picked up. And it's funny, White Dog Games and Holland Spiel all use the same printer here in the US. And so when you open them up, they do have a very distinct smell, which, I mean, they tell you this just what their process is. I forget what it is, if it's like a UV process or something, but you do have to let them air out. And usually putting them in sunlight for a couple hours helps to, I guess, burn off that residue. But when you order 6 or 8 of them at one time and you open them all up, it's pretty overpowering. So anyway, so that's one of them. They Fell Like Stones by White Dog Games.
Okay, so my next game is.
I love how you feigned interest in that.
It's okay. It's a solo war game. Yeah.
Okay, but it's about your illustrious queen's empire.
I mean, it's not that I know we'd also do the war game podcast. I'm more interested in multiplayer war games than solo war games. So,
sure.
I
said that's just because you haven't played with enough war gamers. Play with enough war gamers and you'll win a solo war.
Is that why there's so many solo war games?
Yeah, it's because we're all grumpy and we just don't want to leave our basement. I'll just move for both people.
Okay, so my next game is a lighter game called Lost Explorers. This is supposedly explorers have found the entrance to something. I forget what the actual place that they found. And we're all competing against each other to decipher the clues to find out where the actual entrance to wherever, Shangri-La, Atlantis, whatever. So it's one of these games that has the board is inside the game. So that's the actual player board here, and it's a magnetic clasp here. And you are going to be on your turn. You have workers. You start off with 3 workers, and you're either going to be placing them. Can't really show this. So for each location on the board, it's going to give you 2 to 3 symbols that you have to match. You're going to get the symbols from these discs here. So these discs have a transportation type on one side, and that's what you need to travel to the locations. And the other side are missions. So on your turn, you're going to be placing your people, and you're either going to be placing them here to get one of these tokens. But if you place one person there, you have to take the first token. If you place 2 people here, you can take the second token. So not the first 2, you actually take the second token. You place 3 here, you can take the third token. There's 2 sides, so you can only ever get a maximum of 2 of the tokens at one time. And whenever you take a token, you either have to decide at the point, before you look at the mission side, you have to decide whether you're going to use it as the transportation or you're going to use it as the mission. Because the goal is you want to be completing these missions. So place your workers here or place a worker on the map, as long as you have the proper transportation. And when you put someone on the map, you have to get rid of one of the tokens that match the transportation symbols here. So if it shows 2 trucks and a blimp, you have to have 2 trucks and a blimp in front of you, and you just have to discard one of them. So you maybe get rid of a truck. So you're left with 1 truck and 1 blimp. The missions will tell you on this side, like that one there, you have to have people in those 2 locations. And then you just go by these black symbols on them. Those match the black symbols on the main player board or the main board. Once you do that, you can optionally say, I'm completing this mission. And since this has 2 symbols on it, you're going to move your person, your main explorer, 2 spots on the brown track. First person to get all the way to the end will signal the end of the game along that kind of progression track. So there's 2 progression tracks, one which is brown, I forget what it is, brown, green, for example, and the other one is red, yellow. I forget what the actual colors are of the things. It's 2 different tracks. So you're going to be moving one of your explorers up the appropriate track. In that case, it was a brown track. And along the track, there are little spaces. So that's the track here. So that's the 2 sides of it. You kind of start down here, and as you move your guy up, you're going to be passing different things. Gets you your 4th worker, and these are going to be clues. So the game ends when someone has either collected 4 clues or all those tokens run out. If someone has collected 4 clues, basically they've won the game. They found the entrance to whatever they're looking for. And the neat thing is on the back of the clues, there are numbers. You add all the numbers together, it's going to give you a number between whatever it is, 4 and let's say 40. And on the back of the rule book is a whole bunch of QR codes. And you scan the QR code and it shows you on Google Map where you found it, which I thought was kind of cool. The game is very, very light because it literally places a guy to either take one of those transportation things or put the guy on the map if you have the transportation icons to fulfill a mission. That's it. It's fine. But like I said, it is super light, which if you're looking for a light game to play with someone that plays in about half an hour, 40 minutes, it's fine. I'm not a big fan of the components because as you saw, this is actually how the components are. They sit in the box like this. As you start to take them out, the top one will slide down into the passageway because it actually is, on this side, it's actually angled down into the box. So you're supposed to put them like that so people can only see the front of them. They can't see the mission side, but as soon as there's a gap here, these start to slide down. If you're sitting on opposite sides of each other, it's hard to see the opposite sides tokens. So it looks cool. Everything's in the box that you play with, but there's some gameplay issues with it. Because quite often, sorry, go ahead.
Is it a 2-player game only, or?
Yes.
Okay. The only reason I ask is because if it was more than 2 players, I don't like the design with the board being in like the box cover, because that's very hard to see if you were sitting, at the other end. I don't really care for the game board to be part of the box. I mean, yes, I guess it's a little gimmick that, it's part of that, but is there, so if you place 3 workers, you take the 3rd token.
Yeah.
What's the incentive of placing more than 1 worker? I mean, it's all random anyways, right?
Well,
it's not like do you know what the,
yes,
I mean,
you can see. So because they're colored so that even though when they're stacked in that row, you can see the colors of them.
I guess.
So if you need a blimp and the blue one, which is the blimp, is the 3rd token, you know that you're going to be getting the blimp if you put down 3 people.
I got you. Well, that makes more sense then.
Yeah. And because you can only do each resource side once per round. So I can't say, oh, the blimp is the 3rd one. So put my first guy out there to take one. I put my second guy in the same spot. I take the next one. Place my 3rd. No, you have to decide how many people you're putting on each resource time. And that's, it's a one-shot deal for your turn. If you put 2 there, you take the second one and you can't put any more on that side.
Is this a 2021 release?
Yes.
I mean, it sounds, when you're talking about getting the different movement tokens, or the different type of movement tokens, I initially thought, okay, so this is kind of like their version of Lost Ruins of Arnak, where, you have the boots or the Jeeps or the planes or whatever. And but
this game is much, much simpler than Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd never heard of it. A recurring theme there, but you said this was a free shipping game that you chose.
No, this one, the last game, Venice, was a free shipping one. This is from a different order.
Okay. Yeah. I'll let you. Have you played it just once?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it play? Less than an hour?
Yeah, you're done in a half an hour, 45 minutes.
Okay.
And again, I'll probably be talking about it on one of our first bites. So if you want to know more about it, a bit more how it works, then definitely listen to our podcasts.
No, I'll just wait to see it in your sale pile.
It probably will end up my sale pile. Not because it's a bad game, it's because it's almost too simplistic.
Right. Yeah. I mean, after you played a few times, what's the point? Yeah. Unless you're planning on having more kids sometime in the near future.
Actually, you know what? It does play more than 2 players. It's up to 4 players. Yeah.
It seems like it would be horrible to be sitting on the side where, the game board's here and then you got a component box.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd ever see it, but maybe it doesn't matter. Okay, so my next game is another game from White Dog Games, and this one is another solo game, but we're fast forwarding from the 1870s to the I guess we're going backwards in time. We're going backwards from the 1870s to the 1860s, and we're here in the United States. And this is a game called Jeff Davis. There's something else behind that title besides his name. So Jefferson Davis is it's Jeff Davis, the Confederacy at War. So Jefferson Davis was the president-elect of the Confederate States of America during the American Civil War. And I got it because, well, one, it had been nominated for some awards for 2019 when it came out. And I thought it was an interesting take on the U.S. Civil War, because very rarely do you, especially for a solo game, you always tend to be playing the North. You're playing the United States, you're playing the role of Lincoln or whatever. This one puts a spin on it where you're actually playing the Confederate leader, and it's not really there's some battles and war stuff, and I haven't played it, but from what I've read, it's much more about the logistics, the supplies, logistics, trying to counter the U.S. naval blockade, things of that nature. So I thought it was cool. Again, it's a solo game, and it looks interesting, and it's got a little twist on the American Civil War. So yeah, that's why I got it. Other than that, I haven't played it. I do know it was nominated for some awards. Yeah, for what that's worth.
Well, okay, you said it's a war game solo for the Confederate War. I'm like, okay, whatever. But then you said it's more about logistics, and you kind of, okay, I'm more interested now that you said it's more about the logistics than battles. So
yeah, I mean, it's and it plays pretty. I want to say this one might play a little bit longer. I'm trying to think. It's let me just click on here. It plays anywhere from an hour to 4 hours. So it's not, it's not going to be it's not a super light. It's rated like a 2.89 for weight.
Right.
So it's not just one of those, a lot of solo games are like just push your luck style things. And while this one may have some push your luck to it, I don't think it does. This is much more about this is much more about action points. And I'm not sure if there are cards in this one or not, but it's point-to-point movement or area movement. It does have events, some historical events that pop up. I don't know. I just thought it looked cool, and it's a pretty small playing surface. I mean, the map I want to say is just a dual fold map. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's Jeff Davis, The Confederacy at War by White Dog Games. And this is actually designed by Ben Madison. And Ben Madison within the war gaming community makes a lot of, well, I don't know if he makes anything other than solo games. Perhaps he does. But a lot of his solo games are pretty good. He does a good job.
Okay. So my next one is, I'm not 100% sure why I bought it. I think this is strictly going to be a review only game. Way back in my high school / university days, I was played role-playing games, mainly AD&D plus some other ones. But one of the ones that I own the book for, but never seemed to be able to play often, or it didn't click with us, was the game called Masquerade, Vampire the Masquerade. The license has been thrown around quite a lot. I know they've redone the role-playing game, but I bought Vampire the Masquerade Rivals, which is an expandable card game. So I figured it has nothing to do with role-playing, this is just a card game. So it's a 2 to 4 player card game that lasts 30 minutes to an hour. And I'm assuming that if you know the lore, it's going to make more sense to you, because you're going to be playing a different faction, and each faction has their own deck. Now, this is what I hate about games that are expandable like this. So that's the size of the box. That's the components you get. And each one of these decks of cards, so there's 4 factions in here. So each one of these sealed decks is a faction. Then you have some common cards like mercenaries, that type of things. Then you have location cards. So I'm not exactly sure why. Well, I know why. They want you to go out and buy all the other cards that are going to fill this large area, but to spend money to open up a box like this is like really?
Did you look under the insert? Maybe there's more cards under the insert. Maybe they hid some.
So, I mean, you do get some tokens, HP tokens, things like that. I haven't played this one yet. I have read the rules. I'm not sure how well this one's going to go. So the rules are long. This is a card game whose rules are 18 pages long. I actually watched the how to play video on. So this is published by Renegade Games.
Wait a minute. You watched a how to play video?
I did, because I wanted to get a quick idea of what the game is about. Because I started reading the rules going, okay, I kind of understand this, but maybe because I don't understand the lore, a lot of this stuff doesn't mean much to me. So I watched the quick, not so much how to play, just more of, on your turn, you're going to be playing cards, and your cards are going to be doing, you're going to go out and battle some people in the city, or battle another vampire, or free one of your vampires. And then when you've done that, then you go into this. So it was a very, very high level of what the game is about. It looks sort of interesting. It looks more complex than it needs to be. And it looks like one of these games when I think it's probably going to die a slow death, unless I underestimate how much people love Vampire the Masquerade. Because it looks, for a battling card game to have 18 pages worth of rules. There are so many other battling card games out there whose rule book is like 3 pages long. Even Magic has a quick, how to play in like 3 pages.
You could get Ashes, Rise of the Phoenix Born.
I refuse to get Ashes.
What? So, one, I have to say, you and your sexy vampire games, you're such a sucker for them.
Don't they look all glittery?
Yeah. And maybe that's what happened to you. They put you under their spell, and they've seduced you into winning this game. I don't think you're going to have to worry about filling up that whole box, because I can't see it being that successful. But with it being a Renegade game, they've got some money to burn, and they're committed to, those expansions or whatever. But that's a big rule book. Maybe, did they give you like all the rules, like for all the expansions that are coming out or something? Or
these are just basic how to play rules.
Yeah.
And the other thing that worries me is, so it's Vampire the Masquerade, which is, it's been around for 25, 30 years in the role-playing realm. I have the first edition of the rule book. I know an awful lot of people like it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure whether the people that love the role-playing game are going to love an expandable card game. So
exactly.
That's one thing. So this is a card game that has the theme of the role-playing game on there, but there's no role-playing. So, if you're a role player, this isn't for you. But if you know the setting, maybe you'll like it. Because it is Renegade Games, they tend to release games and never promote them. And then probably next month, there'll be the next Renegade game comes out. They do some excellent games, Renegade, but they don't promote their stuff. And if you're not going to promote something like this, which requires people to buy the base set to make the money to get the expansions, it's like, okay, Renegade, unless you have said we're going to be different this time for this game, then this is probably the only thing you'll see. I'm sure they have maybe 1 or 2 expansions ready to go, but after that, I can't see this supporting this, because they don't tend to support their games anyway.
Right. Yeah, it seems interesting, because I know it's it's an RPG, and I know that it was very popular back in the day, but even that had some issues as far as I think it didn't have like some different iterations because different companies kind of came in and lost the license and had to make so yes, while it was popular, again, like you said, are the same people that liked it then still, are they interested in a card game? And then the other thing, it just seems like, I mean, Sexy Vampire seems like that's about 10 years too late. I mean, that was a rage back when True Blood and things like that were on TV. I mean, they're really, seems like they're putting all their eggs in one basket, hoping that these devotees to the RPG are sitting around waiting for a card game.
Yeah, I could see if they partnered to come up with a role-playing / board game hybrid, because then you could get some of the people that are interested in the role-playing. But to have a strictly a card game with no role-playing in it based on a popular role-playing game, it's like, well, I mean, they have done it before. Lords of Waterdeep, has the AD&D theme, which hopefully got the AD&D players to play it. But I don't know. I think this is going to be a hard sell. So
yeah, and Lords of Waterdeep is also not 18 pages long for rules.
Yeah,
more accessible. I mean, so Renegade, they put out some interesting stuff. Have you looked? Are they bringing the RPG back? Or is an RPG being published right now in that with that title, with that IP?
It's still available, my understanding.
But not through Renegade, through an actual.
Because it was originally done by White Wolf Games.
Right.
And I think like a lot of these places, they went bankrupt and then someone else bought them. And then I believe White Wolf came out again.
Well, maybe they're working in conjunction with them. I don't know.
Because the people beside it are, let's see. Anyway, it's Renegade Games, but I'm assuming this person here, this WOD, which I'm not sure what it stands for, is probably the license holder of Vampire. So they may have given the board game rights to Renegade and the RPG rights. They're doing it themselves or whatever else. So I'm assuming again, those are the rights holders.
And that is a cool box cover. I will give you that. If nothing else, you've got some good art to put on a shelf. Put it out there in the family room when the Christmas time and the family comes over. I mean, what doesn't say Christmas in Graham other than Sexy Vampires? I can see that.
So what's your next solo war game?
No. So before we go, you said you had this game back like when you were in high school or college.
Yep.
Did you were you a sexy vampire? Was that your shtick in high school?
We never.
No, don't play it off like we never got to play it. Was that your shtick? Were you the sexy vampire?
No.
At school, did you wear a cape to school?
No, I did not.
Sunglasses. I can see it with your black hair. You could just walk up like, "Hey, I'm putting you under my spell."
Like Vampire the Masquerade never clicked for us, and I think it's because there was so much. When you played AD&D or a lot of these other role-playing games, you got to kind of create your own character, your own backstory, whatever lore you wanted to. Mm-hmm. Or you could just be a paladin with no backstory. I'm just playing a paladin in this dungeon. You went through the dungeon and fought. Masquerade was more like, well, this is your clan. This is what your clan believes in. This is your hierarchy of a clan. These are the rivalries that you have between clans. They give you all this backstory. It's like, well, I don't care about vampires.
You wanted the supply and logistics version of Vampire the Masquerade or whatever.
How do I get blood from person A to Vampire B?
There you go. We need 18 vials and I need it by Thursday. All right. So you know what? Just to trip you up, my next war game is not a solo game. I mean, pretty much any war game you could really probably play solo. I don't know if they play great solo, but this one is actually designed I think it's designed really for 3 players, but it'll play 2 to 3 players. This is a game from Compass Games, and it is called Brotherhood in Unity. Now, the title alone wouldn't tell you what it's about, but this is one where I saw other people talking about it. I watched some videos on it. I did some research on it, and I got it because, well, it's a card-driven game, and I like those. But I got it because it's such an interesting theme. So this is set in the 1990s, and this is all about the fighting in Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina. So you've got the three different factions in this game, and they say it's a really good I guess thematic game for the time period for the periods, because besides the typical, yeah, we're fighting and it's point to point movement, it also, you have this I don't know if it's called a diplomat track or a foreign influence track. So you're constantly trying to make sure you don't go too far to the bad side of the foreign influence track, because you don't want them coming in and saying, okay, listen, you're getting too powerful, you're committing atrocities, whatever, and so we're going to take aid from you, or we're going to actually bomb you, or NATO bombing you and stuff like that. So everyone seems to rave about it. I haven't played it. I actually don't even know if it showed up to my doorstep yet. I've been trying to track it down. According to Amy, no packages have arrived, and I find that a little suspect, because it should have been there by now. But yeah, it's for me, it's probably, it might be the most modern war game that I have, because I generally don't get a lot into modern war games, like modern time periods. I say that. But it's just something that's just, I'm curious about. And like I said, it does seem to get some pretty good buzz from the people that have played it. Now, whether or not they're shills for the publishing company, I don't know. But from what I've watched, I'm definitely interested in it.
I like the idea, that kind of push and pull of, I'm assuming as you're going down the badness track, you are getting benefits from it, but it's like, okay, well, how far do you push it before you have to stop using it? So I like that idea.
Yeah, because you're not only focusing on your opponents on the board, but then you have this, the NATO countries and and the U.S. back there on the side, that while they're not going to directly, you're not going to fight them directly, you have to worry about how they're perceiving you, and are you it's the old adage, are we the baddies?
No, from Mitchell and Webb. Wait,
exactly.
Are we the bad guys?
I mean, I don't know if any of the armies in this game have rats anuses on their helmets or not, but yeah. So I found it interesting. So that's my next one, Brotherhood and Unity by Compass Games.
That one actually does sound interesting to me as well. So if it ever does show up at your door one of these days, maybe we'll get a chance to play it. So my next game is one that Dean and I have actually already talked about on First Bites, but we played the Kickstarter edition on Tabletopia. So it finally came out on in real life, and it is a rather sexy vampire game. This is called Masters of the Night. This is put up by Ares Games. This is a fully co-op game. You are a family of vampires up here. Each person is going to take a role in one of the vampires. Each one of the vampires has a special ability, and you have come into town because you have been basically kicked out of your previous town. So now you're trying to take over this new town. There are 9 locations on the board. On your turn, you have 2 actions. You can move for an action. You can reveal all the bad people there. So bad people are the people that are trying to track you down and basically kill you. Or you can fight, or you can activate the tile that you're on. Each round, you're going to be revealing a card, and the card will tell you where on the board to put more agents, which are the people that are trying to track you down, and they always come hidden. You can't fight a hidden agent. They have to be revealed, which is one of the actions you can do on your turn. There are quite often going to be events that come up. You're going to be turning cards. They're going to be like, well, you can't go to here this time, or you can't go there this time, or more agents appear, whatever. All the locations on the board will either have a day action, a night action, or both actions. So during the day, vampires are weaker, and anywhere that there is a location that has a day action, you then trigger. And quite often it's going to be, if there's more agents than minions, and minions are the people that are on your side, do this action. You can no longer use any special abilities, for example, or you can't move through this space, or something like that. Once that's all happens, you get into the night phase, which is when the vampires get to go. You can drop off minions, you can reveal, you can fight, you can activate the nighttime abilities. And you are trying to manage your, I think it's called the veil. So the veil is the veil you put over the city to kind of keep you secret. So you want to be killing off agents to get them off the board. because you need to not purify. Vampires won't be purifying, but you can, once there are no agents in a region, you can go to that location and put your sigil down. Everybody needs to get their sigils out. And then the kind of last step of the game is to everybody goes to one person's sigil. So all the players have to be on the same sigil. You have to perform a rite. And if you do that, the veil kind of covers the entire city and you've won the game. If your veil is ever completely exposed, you've lost. And you're going to lose your veil by putting that first step of the game when you are putting agents down. If you put an agent on a location where you are, one of your minions is, basically the agents see you and you move that veil towards 0. I got this game mainly because it is a co-op game. I know Lala likes co-op games. Dean and I played this one before. I like horror games. There aren't a lot of them out there. This one has the horror theme of vampires. The neatest thing that I found from playing this game with Dean and subsequently is the dice pool. So at the beginning of the game, you roll 2 dice per players. Those don't get rolled again. So if you go to fight, that pool of dice is what you have to choose from. So you have to work with the other players to say, okay, there's a couple 6s which will kill them, and there's a couple 1s which don't kill them but do me damage. So how do we want to play this? Do you want me to try and kill off everybody and you use the 1s maybe on locations? Or everybody needs to fight? So I guess I'll take a damage and I'll take a 6. Therefore, at least I kill one person, but I get 2 dice out of the pool. Once everyone has used all the dice in the pool, you then re-roll to come up with a new pool. So I thought that everything else in the game is pretty straightforward. You've seen that these exact mechanisms before. At the beginning of the round, bad stuff comes out, you have to deal with them. But it's the dice pool mechanism which I found the most interesting in this. So if it didn't have that, this would be a completely forgettable game because it is essentially Pandemic with vampires. That dice pool kind of changes it up just enough to make me interested in the game. I'm not sure what I finally feel about this game, but it's got really nice production. Everybody has their own little minis. The cards are quite nice. Like the art is nice. It does have that spooky feeling, but more of a 70s, 80s vampire movie where it was, a little bit scary, but there's not blood and gore everywhere. So I find it enjoyable, but I don't think this is going to be one that's going to stay in my collection because I think there are other co-op games that do a better co-op job. And I don't think that dice mechanism is enough for me to keep the game. Although it's interesting, it's like, okay, I would like to see that with something else. So that is my game, Masters of the Night by Ares Games. Oh.
That is one that I do remember playing, and it was fine. I mean, I'm not a huge vampire person. And, being a co-op game, they are what they are. Sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're hard. This one, I don't remember if we won or lost. I think we lost when we played it on Tabletopia. And it's I think we talked about this on the podcast. I think it was 94, where I definitely enjoyed Skeptics better, but it could just be that we played Skeptics more recently. And this is also one that I thought was, when we talked about it, I thought it was tied into an IP of an RPG game. So I might have been kind of crossing streams there between that one and the last one you talked about the rivals. So yeah, it's a fun, solid game. I was a little surprised that you bought it, but I do know that you definitely like those kind of horror themed games, and Lolo does like the co-op. So I mean, definitely I would play it again. I don't think I'd run out and buy it. I don't think I have a need for it. I got enough co-op games, and I didn't enjoy it that much. I would get Skeptics, I think, before I'd get this one. So, yeah. All right. So my next one, my last war game, and it is a solo war game. Although I think technically you can play it 2 players, but I don't know I personally don't know anyone who's ever played it 2 players. It's always a solo game. This is kind of one of the premier solo games. So the game is called D-Day at Omaha Beach. It was put out way back, I think, in 2009, 2008. This is the fourth printing of it. It's put out by Decision Games, and it probably is the best Decision game that has been produced. Some of them are not very good, but this one, the rule book is good. The play is good. The designer is John Butterfield, and wouldn't mean anything to you, but John Butterfield is one of the, if there was a Mount Rushmore of war game designers, he would probably be on it. Kind of a prolific designer. So this is all about it's a covering a one day of World War II, and it's the D-Day assault on Omaha Beach by the U.S. forces. It's going to play. I don't know if there's shorter scenarios, but I think if you play it in its entirety, it's supposed to take about 8 hours. And it is, so the scale of it is like company level. So a lot of World War II games are either operational, big strategic overviews. This is much more of a, I wouldn't say it's a tactical game, because tactical games to me mean like, man to man or squads or platoons, but this one's companies. And you are, almost, I would say this is more of a simulation than it is a war game, although it's a war game. But there's so many little nuances that are in here. Besides being at the company level, it takes into effect weather. It takes into effect titles, title shifts, because you're moving your amphibious stuff, onto the beaches. It's got, it is a cool looking board, but it's got all these different little color coded dots within the hexes, which allow you to basically determine what you're going to be able to do. And I haven't looked at it in a long time, and I can't remember if they're line of sight, or if it basically tells you, okay, if you're here, then you can move to this color, like dot hex or whatever. But I don't know. It's ranked overall. It's ranked 600 and something. But I will say within the wargaming genre, this is like number 4 within all of the war games as far as what it's ranked. So it's got a lot of love. There are other games within the series, which there's one set in the Pacific, which is really good. And there's another one set in the Pacific, which is not very good from what people say. But I've wanted this for a long time, and it's always out of print. And like I said, it's in its 4th printing. And so when I saw it available, I bought this, and I bought the Brotherhood of Unity. So this one hasn't arrived either. So I'm going to be really, really upset if this game does not show up. And I wanted it before I left for my deployment here, but it didn't come in. So because I had dreams of just setting it up and letting it be set up for months and months and years until I go home. But well, sooner or later I'll get it into my grimy little hands. But that is D-Day Omaha Beach. Turns represent about 15 minutes of real time. And I don't remember what each hex is. I want to say each hex is, I don't know. It can't be that much. It's only 15 minutes, because it's like the map is water, beach, land, and then a little bit past the land or whatever. So, I've talked about it before. If I have a bucket list trip, going to visit the beaches of Normandy is my number 1 bucket list trip. And so this just kind of all plays into it. And well, yes, I know we say it's a game, and a lot of people are like, well, I can't play a war game because that's irreverent to the people who lost their lives. There's something, to me, there's something to be learned from playing the games. And this one is definitely, like I said, more simulation than it is game, but I look forward to it.
Yeah, I'm kind of two minds about that one. It sounded not bad. Then you said it was like, what, 48 hours? I'm like, ooh, I'm not so sure about that anymore.
No, it's just 8 hours.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's just 8 hours.
Yeah, what else do you have to do? Where you can play? You got to get to a hot Rivals the Masquerade party.
I have to put on my makeup, my fangs, and my cape, and go play Rivals.
Well, I'm sure you could play some. I'm sure they've got enough. I've seen a lot of World War II themed vampire games or supernatural style games. You could probably fit in.
So I have one last game. This is my kind of big game for the month. And this one is actually, I believe, from my Essen list. So this is Merchant's Cove.
That's the one that Lance had just bought.
Yep. So I just have the base game here. I think there's already 4 or 5 expansions out for it, because I probably it's a Kickstarter. The box is full of stuff. As you can see, the box lid doesn't even close, and there actually is kind of spacers up here to force the top of the box up. you can fit everything in. The main reason why I got this and I was so intrigued by it is because it's a Euro game where you are making stuff to sell to people in boats. You know, there's the fleets come in and they want like red items and blue items and yellow items. Now, I haven't played the game, but my understanding is that each person plays their own different Euro game. So depending on who you play, Dean's person may be the main mechanism he's using is dice placement. So he rolls dice and gets to place them on his board to activate different things. I could be playing a Tetramino type thing where I got a bunch of things I need to fit onto the board to make my things. Someone else may be doing a deck building where they're playing cards and building a deck to manufacture what they're doing. So we're all playing different Euro mechanisms, but we're all building stuff to sell to the merchants. So I thought that was intriguing, that how we're all playing different items, different ways, kind of like a route type thing when you have to approach the game slightly differently. It's getting kind of mixed reviews of Merchant's Cove, which is why I kind of held off buying the other expansions, because I need to play it first to see how well it works. What I'm worried is, so if you're playing the dice placement game, I quite like dice placement games, but if the game you are playing in dice placement within Merchant's Cove is kind of pale and boring because it's not a fully fledged dice placement game, that was what kind of has me worried about the game, is that I want to make sure that the mechanisms that you're playing are at least fully formed and fully enjoyable, and not just, I like dice placement, I'd rather be playing a fully dice placement game as opposed to this kind of substandard one in Merchant's Cove. So I don't know how it's going to go, but that's my fear of Merchant's Cove. Again, the theme doesn't do anything for me, but it was been on my radar because of that asymmetrical thing when everybody's playing the same game differently. So that is put out by Final Frontier Games, and I believe it is a Johnny Pack game, and I like some of Johnny Pack's other things, like Coloma, and he did the Western game. Can't remember what that was called, but Dean and I played that online, I believe. When you had the outlaws coming in and you had to send gunslingers to the middle area, but you were also doing the other.
That's Coloma, right?
That's right. That is Coloma. There's another game of Johnny Pack's I played. Anyway, I liked some of his other designs.
Yeah.
So I want to try this one mainly because of the designer and because of the idea of everybody being a different game within a larger game.
Yeah, I hadn't really paid much attention to it. I know I've seen a lot of people posting pictures of it and stuff. So I didn't even realize that that's kind of how it was set up with the different mechanisms as far as people playing kind of their own little mini game within it. That sounds interesting. I wonder what the expansions add more, like more merchants that have different mechanisms that they have to use, or what it is. So yeah, I definitely would want to check it out. I've seen pictures. I'm like, it looks interesting or whatever. And I knew there were a lot of expansions for it. But I haven't watched like any videos on it to know what people are saying about it. So yeah, that's cool. I do like the Johnny Pack designs for the most part. So I don't need a game with a bunch of expansions. So I'll expect you to get the expansions for this.
No, I buy the base game, you buy the expansions.
Yeah. I don't know if that sounds like a good deal. So, all right. So my last game is actually the one that I bought the expansion for as well. And there were 2 expansions, but I only bought one of them. So I'm coming, big strides for me. I only bought one available expansion.
That's right. The other one's not available, was it?
No, it was. And I got the base game. So it wasn't like, I bought the expansion without the base game. So the game itself is called Lawyer Up. So Lawyer Up is one that I don't think we ever played it on Tabletopia, and I think it was available, but we had talked about it, and it got some buzz when it first was in prototype design. So it's a game about being lawyers, and you're either playing the prosecutor, you're playing the defender, and it's like an area control because you're vying to win the arguments for within the case. And my understanding is as you win the argument, you can kind of sway the jury members to basically vote for you, for your side. it's the production looks pretty cool. I mean, it's just a card game. You know, you're placing cubes and stuff out there, and the price point on it was excellent. I think I paid $31 for it, maybe, at Cool Stuff. So it's probably no more than $40 MSRP. Plays about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. It says you can play it solo. I don't know if I would do that.
Arguing against yourself.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you another reason besides the theme and besides the kind of the buzz that I got early on. One of the other reasons that stood out to me is one of the designers is Mike. I don't know if you pronounce his name, Nade or Nadi. And he is the owner of Rock Manor Games. And there was a Rock Manor game that came out several years ago. It was a deck building game called Brass Empire, I think. And I really enjoyed it. I bought the game. I played it at Origins. I think I played it with him, and I really enjoyed that game and that design. So when I saw that he was attached to this one, it's his company putting it out. I wanted to give it a try. So this is again, it's an area majority, but you're also, they say set collections. I'm assuming that's probably the jury members that you're doing that with. And then there's some card play and stuff in it. So I picked this up, and then of course I had to pick up the expansion for it, which is the Godfather expansion. I'm kind of a Godfather, I would say fanatic, but I do enjoy the Godfather. And I don't know if it's a true Godfather like theme, like IP theme to it, or it's just they're using the term Godfather. But it's about the mafia, and you're putting the criminal leaders on trial. But in this one, my understanding is you can actually there's ways that you can influence the jury members, scare them, and even take out witnesses and stuff like that as well. So, and the expansion was like $11. So that for that, I'll pick that one up. So that is Lawyer Up, Rock Manor Games. Again, if you haven't heard about it, check it out. I'm trying to think who the big person was. I think it was Rodney Smith that was the big proponent of this early on, which probably really helped it in his Kickstarter. It was a Kickstarter game, but it is out in print, or it is available. I got it through Cool Stuff. They had the base game and the 2 expansions. So if it sounds interesting to you, check it out.
Yeah, it does sound interesting to me. So I'll check out your copy.
There you go.
Because I've actually seen it show up on my local game store in the last week or so. Mm-hmm. And I keep on looking at it thinking I want to buy it. Now that I know that you've bought it plus 1 expansion, because it's a 2-player only game, I'll probably just end up playing with you. So I'm not going to buy my own copy.
Yeah.
So look at that. You saved me like $30.
Yeah. 30 American dollars. That's like $1 million Canadian dollars. So yeah. And you know what? I was surprised it was so cheap. It's just weird to see a game for, $40 or less. It is just cards, I suppose, but still, you would think that it is, with it having been a Kickstarter, that it would have been more expensive. But yeah, I don't know how well it'll play, but thematically it's cool. It's something different, at least.
Yeah, definitely. I've been intrigued ever since we first heard about it. So
yeah, I think it's probably out of stock by now. Cool Stuff. When I bought it, I think it was like 5 copies left, and maybe like 3 copies of the expansions. So,
right.
All right. So that's my last one.
Okay.
Lawyer Up.
So that kind of wraps it up. So we've been through 12 games, something like that.
Yeah.
In about an hour. So I'm hoping that you've kind of seen something that's intrigued your things. Dean and I, as you saw, most of our games, I don't think the majority of people have heard of, either because you're not a war gamer, or I tend to buy the weird games for it. So hopefully we've piqued somebody's interest to have a further look at these games. And again, not all these games are going to be discussed on the First Bites. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about the ones you're interested in, but we can't guarantee that everything's going to be talked about, which is one of the reasons why we do catch up, just to kind of show you a very brief overview of, hey, you may have not have heard this game. You may want to look for it on your local game store or online or whatever else. So I think with that, we shall wrap up this catch-up episode for the month of, what month are we in? June? Yes, this is our June catch-up.
Can I add one thing real quick?
Sure.
I would say that if there's a game on here that we talked about and we haven't already talked about on First Bites and you're really interested in it and you want us to talk about it, drop us a line, let us know, put something in the comments or whatever. And then we will do our best to, to get it played or whatever. So we can maybe talk about it if you want more information on it. And that's always a good barometer. And, if it's, maybe you're not a war gamer, but one of the war games sounded interesting or whatever, that's fine. Just let us, it could be any of them. Just let us know.
Yeah. And I tend to play all the games I buy.
but you don't always talk about them.
I don't always talk about them. Yeah. So if there's something that, especially for myself, if you've seen something that I've showed here, I will probably have all these games played at least once over the next 2 weeks. So
yeah, I just don't like to waste my playing time by playing bad games like you buy, and then and then you feel obligated to put out a video on them. So yeah. I'm trying to curate my collection and refine my playing senses.
Sure.
Yeah, whatever.
So with that, we shall wrap up this episode. We'll be back at the end of July to do our July purchases. No idea how many games we'll have bought. It all depends on what hits the stores and what kind of piques our interest. But we tend to buy stuff every month anyway. So
and I'm on the road in a hotel, and that's usually pretty dangerous for me. When I get bored on a Sunday and my day off, and I start scouring the internet sites.
So we shall wrap this up, move on to our next recording. So again, if you anything, leave us a comment either on the email in the comment below the video, or send us an email to Board Game Breakfast, whatever Dean's email address is.
Board Game Buffet.
That's it.
At gmail.com.
That's the one.
It's only been how many years?
We're only coming up to close to our 100th episode. I'll get it eventually.
There you go.
So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
See ya.